to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You know what, man, I am super excited to have you here because I'm looking out my window right now. I don't know if you know this or not, but I live in Florence, Italy. And every day I walk down the streets and I look at these statues. And when I look at your body, and right here, just through the Zoom, you look like one of these statues that I see walking down the streets in Florence. So I'm excited.
That's what I was going for, actually.
So I'm excited to try and figure out how the heck you do it. So before we jump into all the products that you've created, I want to dig in a little bit on your background, and I'd like to talk about your dad. Your dad was an engineer, and he came up with 300 different patents, and he actually, if I understand correctly and did my research correctly, he was actually a part of or built the lunar rover. Is that right?
That's right.
Tell me about that. Like my father was a truck driver.
That was well before I was born. So I don't that. I mean, he had like a crazy exciting life before I came. Yeah, he was a scientist and an inventor, very innovative. Did a lot of things for General Motors, developed a lot of automotive technology. And then he worked for a group called Defense Research Laboratories, which was a General Motors owned weapons contractor.
Yep.
Which obviously General Motors didn't want to really be in that industry. But what they did, they were the ones that built the lunar roving vehicle for NASA. And so it was really a small team. There were 8 guys working on the team. They had $1 billion budget. Sounds nice, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. I think it was that project, the magnitude of that project. When he was done, he was like, wow, like I just added so much shareholder value to, the General Motors share price. Now, by the way, you'll still see the lunar roving vehicle with General Motors advertisements. Like they can use that forever. They have limitless rights to all that footage and information and everything like that. So the idea was it was $1 billion advertising campaign. And and one thing in the contract was if the roving vehicles didn't work for any reason, nobody was allowed to know they were made by General Motors. Because, that's just like a stereotype. It's like, they bring the car to the moon and it doesn't work and everybody's like, oh, GM, that's not what General Motors wanted.
They didn't want to be tied to it.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. In what ways do you think your dad's sort of engineering background, entrepreneurial spirit, and inventor side of him, in what way do you think he has impacted what it is that you do now?
He was always interested in the fact that there can be many solutions to one problem. And he pretty much gave me this was not intentional, but he gave me a kind of lack of interest in standard education, because he would always say, like, your teachers are going to tell you this is the way to do something. And what they should be saying is this is a way to do something. But there are many different ways to go about solving all sorts of problems. So he just didn't really care for the sort of standard answers. He didn't care for the standard technologies. He's one of those guys who, no matter what he buys, whether it's, a ride lawnmower or a clock or something like that, he will improve it. He will take it apart and make it a better product, because he just kind of doesn't like the mediocrity of a lot of the products out there. And it's just a way of thinking that I don't think anybody really has other than him. And so he definitely taught that to me. Another thing he told me, because I really wanted to go to medical school, like that was my plan, like right out of high school. Because this was always, life sciences were kind of always my interest. He goes, no, I'm not paying for that. I'm like, Okay, well, what are you paying for? And he goes, I'll pay for you to major in business. I'll pay for you to get your master's in business. So I went and did both of those things. Hard to beat somebody else paying the bills. So went and did that. And then I started developing different biomedical things. Well, then my mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis. And that's what got me to develop OsteoStrong and develop that technology. And it was funny because my dad said, the reason I wouldn't pay for your medical education is because you were going to do that anyway. He says, you just absorb. And I do, like, usually when I read a book, I can tell you what's on like page 67. Like, I have a really good memory for that kind of thing. So he said, I knew you were going to get the medical stuff anyway, because that's just what you read about. He said, I wanted you to understand business. And then he said, I spent the best part of my professional life building billions of dollars of value for the shareholders of other companies. And he's like, you need to do that for yourself. Now, my dad did go on and start a number of successful companies after that, but he wished he had started much earlier. And so it's pretty much what I did.
All right. Before we get into the actual product that you created, I want to approach it from a little bit of a different angle. You have delivered a product, which we'll talk about in a second, that the market has never seen. Nobody's seen this. Right. Are there any particular approaches that you take when you are developing a new product? Because, when you're creating something that nobody's ever seen before, and you got a blank, as I say here in Italy, tabula rosa, there's blank slate, right? Mm-hmm. Are there any particular approaches about how you look at something when you're trying to create a product?
Well, I try and imagine, like, it usually starts with a population. Like, when it came to bone density, for example, like my mother had low bone density. She was diagnosed with osteoporosis. Many people who are listening probably don't realize that kills as many people as breast cancer does. It's just not as dramatic. It's sort of like you have a hip fracture, you go to the hospital, you can't move around, you get pneumonia, you die. After the age of 50, you have a 50% chance of death within 1 year of a hip fracture. That's a crazy statistic. Yeah. So she was diagnosed with that, and like she was super active and athletic. And the idea that people are like, oh, well, I work out or I ride a bike or whatever, I'll never have to worry about osteoporosis. Yeah, they're totally wrong. And coincidentally, we have discovered how much force it takes to grow bone density. You need 4.2 multiples of body weight through the hip joint to do anything at all to bone. So weightlifters don't get that. And so once realizing that, I thought, okay, how do we build bone in the first place? Well, we do it through high impact. Little kids running around, jumping. That's how we build bone density. When we become adults, typically our bodies are too heavy to absorb some of the shock on the ground, what scientists would call ground reaction forces. I always hated that term because the ground doesn't react, you do. But anyway, it's such an annoying term. But we go through a process where, like, when we're young, we pound our heels on the ground, and that builds bone density. As we get older, we shift our weight to the balls of our feet to decelerate ourselves. And as we begin to develop and decelerate and absorb less impact, and bone density starts going down. So what I wanted to do was create a therapy method where we could build it like it was built in the first place. And so it was an impact emulation device, a series of devices, which would give us the benefit of high impact without the risks of high impact. So, like, somebody gets in a position to absorb high impact force, let's say like a shallow squat, like just knees bent. So there's a 120-degree angle of inclusion behind the knee. And then loading the lower extremities instead of with like 200-300 pounds, somebody might do at a gym, you are far more capable when you're just short of locking out the joint. These are the impact ready range of motion. So if you're to like stand up on a chair and jump off, you would land with a 120-degree angle of inclusion behind the knee. So get people in that position. And even postmenopausal population that has never lifted weights ever, they're using 600 pounds first time. And then it builds up and they'll get over 1,000 pounds. And so they're using, and it continues from there. Like they're the first kind of clinical trial style study that we did was at University of East London. And the hospital we use is called Stratford Village Surgery. And the individuals there, nobody had ever exercised of the test. In fact, we didn't, because we didn't want somebody to say, well, you know, so-and-so had an athletic background, so maybe that's why they had higher bone density, even though they started with lower bone density. I don't want any of that confusion. So pure sample, never exercised before, poor nutrition. It usually accelerates the bone loss problem, but also just general lack of activity. So we had a great test group, and then we began running tests. And as these individuals started loading, their ability to produce and absorb force just went up so quickly. And the physicians would say, so I mean, I knew this was going. It had already been effective in the market. So I'd already done some test markets. We already had like I think 3 locations in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I think almost every physician in Albuquerque, New Mexico recommends using OsteoStrong. So it was already doing well, but this was like a bigger moment to show the world like what this can do. And definitely better for a more scrutinizing medical professional group. So, you know, like a group like Kaiser, for example, California, I'm sure you're aware, like huge hospital system / insurance provider. So they are one and the same. So there's no middleman. Like if they are to adopt something like this, they need a lot of actuarial data showing that it can help a broad population. So that's kind of what we were going for. And the physicians who were all doing the protocol along with the test subjects, they see they're putting over 1,000 pounds to their legs and they feel great. Like they're not in pain or anything. Like these weights are really high. Like what do weightlifters lift with their legs? And I'm like, well, you know, yeah, you can do like a YouTube, you know, who squats the most search, but that's not regular people. That's usually like the outliers. So if you look at the general population, typically a beginner will have 1.3 times their body weight, multiples body weight that they lift. And an advanced lifter is 1.53. So now I'm not talking about a leg press, because the leg press is at a 45-degree angle and most of the weight is going straight into the floor. So you can load up a leg press and think you're pushing 1,000 pounds. Nah, that's probably more like 300 pounds or something like that, because it's rolling on a track that's at at an angle. It's sort of like if you push your car down the street and your car weighs 3,500 pounds, it doesn't mean you can bench press 3,500 pounds. Everybody gets that when I say that.
That was good. That was really good.
Yeah. Well, I've been working on it a long time because people are like, yeah, but I leg press like 2,000 pounds. And I'm like, yeah.
No, you don't.
You think you do, but that's not actual output from your legs. That's
it's interesting.
An angle.
I listened to Peter Attia on Joe Rogan's podcast maybe a week or two ago. Did you happen to catch that episode?
I didn't catch it. No,
it was good. And he said he's got this thing where he's saying, everybody's training for a marathon, they're training for this or that, but he's training for the 100-year-old Olympics. He wants to be able to, be 100 years old and be in the Olympics, right? It's a metaphor, really, but it's stupid shit. Like the ability to pick a suitcase up. He's got this whole list. Like, could I pick a suitcase up at 100 years old and put it in the overhead compartment on a plane? Right. All this stuff. But he said something interesting. I'm going to get this wrong, but you'll get the idea. It was something like 80% of people who are over 60 years old who have a fall, or maybe 70 years old who have a fall, will die from the fall. So
that's totally true.
Which is, I was shocked when I heard that number. And it's like, and Rogan's like, what are you talking about? He said, well, it's like when they fall, they die because their bones are so osteopenia, brittle. I guess is what it's called, brittle. Right?
You could just say brittle. Yeah, the osteopenia and osteopenia is like pre-osteoporosis. So the bones become more porous.
Yeah, and they just fall. So okay, so now you've got this device, right? So the device is called, you mentioned it earlier, it's called OsteoStrong. It's a OsteoStrong Spectrum System, which is its full birth name. Is that right?
Did your homework, didn't you?
I did.
I'm shocked you know that. Yeah, it's called the Spectrum System.
Okay, so now you've got this system in place, and you got to bring this thing to market. You got to make this baby work. Mm-hmm. Why do people who create things? This is a general question, but I'd love your answer. Mm-hmm. Why do people who create things fail? And you had such unbelievable success with this.
The problem can be remedied in 1 second for everyone. The issue is they're afraid of ridicule. Because when you come up with something nobody's ever seen, I think it might have been Socrates that said this for the first time, all new ideas are ridiculed in the beginning, then violently opposed, and then completely accepted as normal. Oh, no, he said accepted as obvious.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah, and I like probably the most modern example of this is the Apple iPhone. When the iPhone first came out, every single tech reviewer, with the exception of Walter Mossberg at the Wall Street Journal, normally the Wall Street Journal writers are just better. But Mossberg was like, this is the future. And he says, don't think this is a touchscreen. This is a touchscreen like you've never seen it. I've read the technical documentation. This is going to change everything. This is going to be the future of mobile. And everybody was like, Mossberg doesn't know what he's talking about. This is a terrible idea. Because back then, BlackBerry was the king.
I remember.
Remember the BlackBerry? I had a BlackBerry. Did you?
Yeah, of course.
Of course. Yeah, everybody had a BlackBerry. And their thing was their awesome keyboard. And you could hear the clicks on the keyboard. And it felt good to type on. And I remember thinking, like, I just can't see myself not having that keyboard. But I decided, okay, like they're making a big deal out of this iPhone thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and get the first one because I believe Walter. Like I always read what Walter wrote, and most people would just say some total contrived, they copy from another reviewer, just all the same crap.
Yeah,
he actually thinks about it.
He does. He's great.
You know who I'm talking about.
Walter Mossberg. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's retired now, but
is he retired?
Yeah.
And he's also with that. He's always on stage with that woman. What's her name? The tech lady.
I know who you're talking about. I'm not about.
She's aggressive. She's always looking for a fight. I'm trying to think of her name, but it'll hit me. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I got it, and it was, of course, immediately it was like, oh, this is totally different than any touchscreen you've ever seen. And of course, everybody wanted to look at mine because it's like, well, is that really better? And I'm like, oh yeah, I can type so much faster because I don't actually have to push a key down. I'm just tapping the screen very lightly. And, I could type, like I just type like a sentence, like what is it? The red fox jumped over the lazy dog. That sentence uses every letter in the alphabet. That's how you test the keyboard, by the way.
I never knew that.
The red fox jumped over the lazy dog. And so no, I'm sorry, the quick red fox, because you got to get Q in there. So, I mean, I typed that in just real fast, like almost as fast as I could say it. And people were like, wow. And all of a sudden now you look at the mobile landscape, and whether it's Apple or not, there are no keyboard phones. So they changed the whole market. First, they were ridiculed. Then they were violently opposed. Like there were BlackBerry ads that like just claimed superiority because of the keyboard. It was obviously too late at that point.
Yep.
And then about a year of that, I think they hired Rihanna to be their spokesperson. BlackBerry did, and they probably didn't even realize that was like a last gasp for air. And then they were just crushed right after that by Apple. And so
she just became a billion. She just became a billionaire. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah. Last month, she just hit $1 billion net worth. Crazy, right?
Well, she makes smart moves. I know she got paid a staggering amount of money to represent BlackBerry, and she didn't even have to completely fulfill the contract, because I think they were out of business well before. Right. And she's just like, I still get the money.
Yep.
Yeah, I think she wanted to be paid up front. I think that was like a thing.
She's smart.
So yeah, she's a good strategist, I guess, or she surrounds herself with good advisors.
So what were the steps that allowed you to take this thing to market? Like, how did you go from idea to actually getting it in the consumer's hands?
Well, testing, because it was medical. You got to do a lot of testing and documentation. You got to publish. The quality of publication is not really all that important. Like for a drug to be FDA approved, you typically only need one study. Sometimes they'll ask for a second one to verify, but the bar is really low. And now that's also a pharmaceutical, but for a physical medicine intervention like OsteoStrong, you're not giving somebody a chemical that's not found in nature. You're triggering the body to fix itself. So there's physical medicine interventions, or what they call non-invasives, are much easier to get through testing. And then they don't really give FDA approval for devices. It's more like a certification. Like as in they'll certify it won't hurt you. So we ended up doing that, and it went well. But delivering it to the market was a delicate balance of finding out what we could get manufactured, trying to get it manufactured so that a medical office could first support it, and get enough people using it so that it could be profitable. And there was some playing with that, but this is just like taking any other product to market. The difference is nobody had ever seen anything like this before. And of course, there were physicians that would say, like, this is a fraud, it's a scam, it's a lie. And it's really weird when you're the first one to do something, you get called a liar, like right out of the gate. And it's just like, you idiots haven't even seen this thing yet. You haven't touched it. You don't even know how it works. And you're already banging a drum, screaming fraud. You don't know. And so this is what keeps so many entrepreneurs just stopped in the tracks.
Why didn't it stop you?
Because I expected it. Because I knew I would meet resistance. And it was like, that's just part of the game. Like, you will have to deal with the kind of the ridicule, the sort of smart ass authorities on a certain subject. And I was polite when I dealt with them. Actually, interesting. So my first invention was in medical. And so great part about physicians is when you show them the evidence, you can get them to do a 180-degree turn, like in an hour. And I was doing that, maybe 100 a week, where I'd talking to them, a group of people in a room, and I'm lecturing, and all of a sudden they, like I'll say questions at the end, and they're asking questions in the middle, but they're just so excited because they realize, oh, this isn't just some silly thing that you're selling. This could tremendously help people. And they all said, like, we're all thinking of about half of our patients that this would be perfect for. Now, it's not perfect for every patient. Nothing is. So they started realizing that they had some people that would benefit from it, and they're going to send them over and see how it goes. And of course, it works. So, we saw positive outcomes with all of those patients. So it was more like I knew there was a fight to fight. I knew I had to be able to present the evidence, and conditioning myself to be better at presenting the evidence was what I had to work on. Because most of the time people are worried about all kinds of stuff they can do nothing about. Yeah. Like they'll say, like, somebody who would not have gone forward with the idea would say, physicians are so closed-minded, it's just impossible. Yeah, they are closed-minded, but it's not impossible. You just have to get past all of the, and in defense of physicians, you know how many stupid things are out there for your health that do absolutely nothing, that like the physicians have to like talk their patients off a ledge about? Like, I remember it was probably 15 years ago where people were talking about how alkaline water was going to like end all disease. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Like, if you had like, I don't remember the name of the company that made them. There's a couple ultimately, but alkalizing the water, making it less acidic and more of a base, was just it was like, it solved the problem of all disease. That's how this was being marketed. And obviously it was completely untrue, and it was a garbage product. And if anything, it made you sick. But it was just kind of mind blowing, what was being claimed, but physicians just shut it down. Like, this is ridiculous. Also, by eating more of a base diet instead of an acidic diet just means your body's going to make more acid. Like, what you eat and what ends up in your bloodstream is often the opposite, because your body needs to be at a homeostasis. Like, it knows where it needs to be. And if you throw it off in one direction, it's going to try and get back to neutral. And so people end up having worse problems with acid, stomach acid, because they were eating like an anti-acidic nutrition program. So basically my point is, physicians are dealing with silly solutions that don't work all the time. They're answering these questions all the time. And so when they saw my thing, when they saw OsteoStrong, they're like, this is the new alkaline water.
Right.
And instead, I sit down with them, and so there's a couple things I did, which I learned in medicine is excellent. Number one, when I give a presentation, I might talk for 15 minutes about the limitations of my data. So you start with what you don't have and what you wish you had, but you don't. You disarm everybody in the room, because everybody was like showed up to basically tell me, fuck you, Dr. Jaquish. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're doing. I was super young back then also. I'm 45 now, but I mean, that's still kind of, for inventing medical stuff, that's still like, I'm like an infant. Yeah, but I mean, I was like 30, and they're like, there's no way. Like, there's no way you could have the experience or understanding. And, I heard him say a lot of things, and I'm like, well, I respect everything you're saying, and you're right. Usually people would need more experience. And I apologize for inventing this so early in my life, but let me show you what I did find. And so you first present what you don't have. So they can't really complain. They can't really say, well, what you're not saying is that all these other types of studies could be done, but you just haven't done those yet. So we really don't know. Instead, saying we don't have any long-term studies, but this is a physical medicine intervention. So the building of bone density in older people is no different than when children build their own bone density via high impact activity. So I don't believe we need those long-term studies. And so I just go through everything that they could possibly say at the end to trash it. And then I'm like, and then here's what we had. And I got them all, like at the edge of their seat by the end of the presentation, because once I show them what I found, like, well, that almost seems obvious. Like, why didn't anybody else think of that? And I said, I think if you're around long enough and you look at different things in medicine and technology, you can ask yourself that every single day with every new invention. Why didn't somebody think of this 50 years ago? But it's just one of those processes you have to go through, and you're going to get criticized. You're going to be, and then people will also attack your character, because especially when they come out really hard against you. Like, there was a chiropractor who was just trashing me so hard. And then she went after my credentials, where I got my degree wasn't good enough. And it's like, what does that have to do with anything? Did I invent something that works or not? And so, I mean, it's an ad hominem attack, right? When you're losing the debate, you attack the person's character. We have now in politics, when a politician is losing a debate, they just call the other person a racist. And, it just ends the conversation. But that's what that is. It means you've lost. And to save yourself some embarrassment, you just make the other person look bad. But it also means you lost. Mm-hmm. So, and people are starting to wake up to that. It's like, okay, you're just trying to end the conversation, attack the person.
Well, this is interesting. This is interesting, right? So now we've got the first invention. You have to deal with all the ridicule, the backlash, and everything that's coming at it. Was the second invention easier in terms of all this stuff that you're talking about because you now had the credibility?
I would have thought so. But my second invention really had to do with loading of the body from a fitness standpoint, not a bone density standpoint. So needed to work differently. It needed to have full range repetitions. It needed to have a lot of blood flow. It needed to have a cardiac effect that was stronger than any existing fitness solution out there. It needed to be something that people who had compromised joints can have access or limited access to. Because basically, something that only works for the young athletic population, probably not even worth going down that path, because at some point it's going to injure somebody, which is most likely why it's reserved for young athletic people. You need something that everybody can, because if everybody can't use it, there's something wrong. Or it's too risky or something like that. So I was thinking about all these different things. And I also, when realizing that a human is 7 times stronger here than he or she is here, why would you ever lift a weight? I mean, that is why I wrote the book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. So I wrote the book and explained that lifting a static weight is a terrible stimulus to try and grow muscle. Already, I mean, even inefficient weightlifting is better for your heart and your lungs and your circulation system than cardiovascular activity, which also chronically upregulates cortisol, diminishes muscle, and preserves body fat. So cardio is not the answer. And then strength could be the answer, but strength was done so incorrectly that I really wanted to go deep into first variable, just kind of variable resistance research, meaning we changed the resistance from the bottom to the top of the movement. Well, when doing that, it became super obvious that, because at first I was thinking of just like writing a book, because I was already really busy with OsteoStrong, right? I didn't need another thing to do. But of course, most entrepreneurs don't need another thing to do, but that's not what they do, right? So I was like, I had this idea. I'm like, I believe this is going to change the world. Like, we're going to be able to take an industry, fitness and strength training, and point out why it's so ineffective. I put this in the book. I put it right on the back cover of the book. Fitness is the most failed human endeavor. Like, we have about, between home workouts and people that go to the gym with males over 18, just about half that, no, wait a minute, I'm sorry. It's like 26%. Yeah, I don't know where I got half. I was thinking of a different study. 26% of males over 18 are doing strength training. How many are in like spectacular, photograph-worthy shape? Maybe 1 out of 10,000, maybe 1 out of 100,000. Yep. So rare. Like, everybody I know with a decent six-pack has a supplement contract.
Yeah.
Except every male should have a six-pack, all of them. So I just look at the fitness industry, and it's just a joke. Like, nobody's succeeding. They're pretty good at selling memberships. They definitely sell the dream, but they don't deliver it. And so I had a better solution. I'm like, okay, I got to bring this to market too, but I have a superior scientific argument. So there's a 260-page book, and there's 250 scientific references in there. Here's the problem. I was used to talking to physicians who, when you show them science, they're very excited and impressed. The fitness industry, I didn't realize, and I was warned, because I talked to a lot of people in the industry. They're like, oh, no, you're talking about the lowest common denominator. Like, a lot of people who are attracted to fitness are just like not intelligent, like not at all. Like, maybe some of the dumbest people out there. And it was pointed out to me also that the majority of fitness information is on Instagram and YouTube, pictures and videos. Why? Because a lot of fitness fans are illiterate or really can't read very well. And I did not particularly listen to that advice, because I was like, I mean, if you got a better solution, you got a better solution. Boy, were they right. And so within a week of launching the product, we pivoted, because I was focusing on a fitness group of people. Basically realized I need a smarter customer, because they'll read the science and understand. And then once they all do it and become successful, then, it'll go everywhere, because the people that just aren't smart enough to be able to absorb that message, like, people who were violently opposed to the iPhone ended up all getting iPhones. But it took some time, because once everybody else had one and was having a better mobile experience, they just sort of quietly, like, threw their BlackBerry in a drawer and went to the Apple store and got an iPhone. So, like, I know the same thing's going to happen. And so we started targeting busy professionals, and that changed everything. It was a slightly different market, and looking at who was interested in absorbing a more scientific message. Now, a more intelligent person won't go to the gym year after year and work out with no results. But an unintelligent person will do that, thinking that any day now, they're just going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, even though right now they look like Homer Simpson. And that is like 99, I think it's 80% of males in the United States are either overweight, obese, or morbidly obese as of this year. Isn't that mind blowing?
How much do you think like if you were to give a percentage, what percentage of diet has to do with getting the six pack versus training?
Great question. A lot of people like to come up with, being in great shape is like 80% nutrition or 20% exercise. Well, but that implies that exercise doesn't really mean much. It's 100% diet, and it's also 100% exercise. Both need to be they don't need to be perfect, but they need to be, the exercise needs to be stimulating growth, which almost all workouts don't do that. And the nutrition needs to be giving the body the building blocks to build muscle and at the same time reduce body fat. And another myth in fitness is that you can't lose body fat and gain muscle at the same time. Total bullshit. Like there's many studies that show if you're at a protein surplus but a calorie deficit, you can absolutely build muscle and you can absolutely lose body fat at the same time.
Speaking of calorie deficit, did I understand correctly that you're eating one meal every 2 days? Did I get that right?
I tried that for that was for an experiment, but I eat one meal a day.
Now you eat one meal a day. So you're more on the sort of Mark Sisson sort of approach to things. Is that right? Do you know who he is?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Mark's a very smart guy. So I want to benefit from an intermittent fast. I have come to, like, everything I do is backed up by research. Calorie deficit, I definitely apply a calorie deficit every day. I still have body fat to lose. Until I'm at the body fat I want to be, I will have body fat to lose. But I'm very low right now, so that won't go on for much longer. Second thing is that a lot of these other principles that some of the people in the industry that realize that their customers are real stupid. They think it's like intermittent fasting or calorie deficit. And because calorie deficit has more information behind it, it's been studied for 75 years. Also, it really hasn't worked very well for 75 years. But they'll push that and then completely cherry pick, the studies that support calorie deficit. And they'll find some nitpick problem with every single study about intermittent fasting. I think they do that because they know their customers are stupid and they can't approach it from a more mature standpoint, which is there are benefits that are unique to intermittent fasting. And there's also benefits to calorie restriction. Why not just do both? I seem to be like the only guy out there saying that, because there's like this war between self-appointed nutrition gurus. By the way, actual like certified nutritionists are still talking about like the food pyramid. So they're like back in like the 1940s. Right. Yeah. And so it's like this sort of like religious war between calorie deficit and intermittent fasting. And I'm like, who cares? They're both tools. Apply them both.
I have a question that have you ever been to Europe, France, Italy, any of those countries?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been to every country you mentioned probably 10 times.
Okay, perfect. This will help. So I moved to Florence, Italy 3 months ago, and the thing that has shocked me is I'm surrounded by people that are, I'm 55 and I'm surrounded by people that are my age or older that are clearly fitter. They're much more mobile. And I suppose it's because of the amount of walking they're doing. But the bigger point is I can't find an obese person here. I really can't. And I look for it. It doesn't exist. And these motherfuckers are eating, croissants for breakfast. They're when I go out to dinner with them, there's, they have like 6, the antipasto, the primi, the segundo. And the only thing I can figure out, and not to mention they're all drinking at least 3 glasses of wine a day. The only thing I can figure out is they're walking a lot, the ingredients are better, and the portions are substantially smaller. But I
you're right about everything.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like, they're much more averse to like packaged processed foods. Yeah. Like pretty much everything is kind of like the way it is in nature. I mean, yeah, the pasta, that's ground up grains and flour, and then they turn it into pasta. But other than that, like they really aren't messing with much. And so that helps a lot. So one of the reasons food is processed is to make it more dense. So meaning more calories in a bite of food, right? So like if you take a bite of pasta, that might be like, I don't know, 12, 15 calories or something like that. You take an Oreo cookie and that might be 30 calories. So they're ramming a lot of, it's not nutrients, it's calories. And when you can deliver sugar and salt at the same time, your body very much enjoys the sugar and wants as much of it as it can get, but it doesn't taste sweet because it's covered up by the sodium, which also helps you retain water, which gives let's call it a satisfying feeling when you end up retaining that water. So it's kind of, they strategically made food addictive. And yeah, the Italians, almost nobody in the European Union, with the exception of its latest exit partner, the United Kingdom. There's a lot of packaged food in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, closer to America.
They're closer to America, right? But like in France, like if you're looking for like a bag of chips, you kind of have trouble finding it. Like
that really helped me what you just described, because that was a piece I didn't understand, because I'm looking at, even though the portions are smaller, I'm still looking at the frequency of the meal, and even though it's a smaller portion, it's still a first plate, a second plate, a third plate, but calorically it's probably lower because of what you just described, because it isn't processed.
Absolutely. Here's another thing. Italians skip meals all the time.
They do.
So they're doing intermittent fasting. They just call it I'm busy. Like I was in Siena for 2 weeks right before coronavirus. I stayed at this resort, and like they had a huge like feast for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I noticed like this resort was far enough away where the staff had to eat there too, because they couldn't like go to town. It was like getting down the mountain into Siena was like 40 minutes. And so, but I noticed the staff pretty much only ate dinner, or they might have had like an apple or something like at the end of lunch or something like that. And it's probably one of those resorts where like you can have 300 guests there, and there was maybe 40 or 50 staff. Real nice place. But I just kept an eye on them, and I just noticed like they're actually intermittent fasting. They just don't call it that.
I love that.
And they're doing caloric restriction, they're doing intermittent fasting, and their food choices are pretty good. Now, what you probably don't see very often is muscular people in Italy.
No,
because it's like almost never, and they're way protein underfed. Like if you want to build muscle,
in fact, every time I walk into a restaurant, there's some comment. There's Iron Man, Captain America, and I'm half your size, for 25% of your size, but I'm the giant when I walk into the place because they're all real thin. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and when I was in Siena, like there were people who would like follow me and take pictures.
I was gonna say you're the Rock for sure, walking around there.
I thought it was really funny. Actually, it's funny when I go to mainland China, they actually think I am Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, I believe it.
And I'm like, you know, like I walked into this factory and this one girl who was welding computer boards, little solder points.
Yeah,
not welding. She says Fast and Furious, and everybody looks up, and these women all come over, and they're all excited, and they're like kind of poking at me, like, you know, like, is it hard? Like, what is it? You know, like I'm like, what do you want? And they're like, you're the guy from the Fast and Furious movies. And I'm like, no. And I was like, are you talking about Vin Diesel? No. And they're like, no, you're the Rock. That's and really I'm like, funny. Okay, I'm a white guy. He's Polynesian. Like, we don't have to go any further. Like, we're not even the same race.
It's so funny.
Like, he's an islander. Like, and he looks like an islander. Like, I pulled up pictures. of Dwayne Johnson. You know, him smiling, me smiling, put, you know, the phone next to my face, and I'm like, and see, not me. And they're like, oh, that's definitely you. So apparently all Americans look the same. I thought that was pretty funny.
That's funny. All right, as we wrap, I'm going to ask you, I want to ask you some questions that fall into the personal side of things. Some of these will seem a little bit weird. Just roll with them. What do people often get wrong about you?
So because I'm a two-time market disruptor, both in medicine and in fitness, I've become very successful. People, especially in fitness, which is an industry where not a lot of people make a decent income. In fact, most people make very little, like almost like I don't know how they survive kind of income. It leads to a lot of jealousy. And also, I think in the bodybuilding fitness world, a lot of people, they kind of get into it because maybe they have some sort of inadequacy complex. Like, you know, they're really short, so they're going to show everybody by being really muscular, or something like that. But there's some issue there where they're much more prone to just jealous rage. And when they see me, and they see me with a successful company and living the way I live, which honestly is just like, yeah, my Instagram would lead you to believe that I spend every day on a different beach. And I'm driving, you know, various exotic sports cars all the time. Like, I work like maybe 12 or 14 hours a day. Like, yeah. And when I take some pictures on some foreign beach somewhere, I mean, I might do that, but also I might take 20 pictures and use 5 of them over the course of a year. And that doesn't mean that I've been on the beach all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you definitely, when you're selling a product, you got to remember, people don't buy products; they buy better versions of themselves. So, like, nobody cares that my product is made out of anodized aluminum and, you know, super high quality manufacturing. They want to gain musculature. They want to be lean. They want to look like a superhero for the wife and kids. Like, and that's a wonderful thing to be. And so the resistance really just has to, so that's the lifestyle that I'm promoting. Because also, I mean, like, the way my meals go, I have better results than most people following anything in standard fitness. I eat 1 meal a day and take 1 supplement. I mean, my meal prep, and because like a lot of bodybuilders, they carry like a suitcase with like little Tupperware containers of like boiled chicken and, you know, whatever. And they're like complete slaves to what they believe their nutritional requirements are. Whereas I got a perfect six-pack, I got veins showing in it. You know, I eat one meal a day and I take one supplement, and I really don't have anything else to worry about. I'm dry fasted 20 hours a day, so I don't even need to drink water because I get all my water in like a 4-hour window. So it's really like a lot of people don't want to, they might not want to understand. There's a term I'm working on that I'm going to push really hard called achieved ignorance. And it exists in nutrition, but where you can really see it obviously is in political discussion. Because there are certain people who just want to read the things that support their existing opinion. And they will work so hard to either ignore or dismiss anything that does not support their existing position because it makes them feel better. And I think when it comes to fitness, if somebody's been, let's say they're a personal trainer and they've been pushing weights, lifting weights for 20 years. Well, I come along and I'm like, you know, oh, weightlifting is a waste of time. And they're like, oh, I hate that guy. And he's a liar and he's wrong. Now, they haven't read anything. Maybe they can't even read. But the point is they're upset. And their emotions will keep them from ever learning anything because of this achieved ignorance. They worked hard to be that ill-informed. And like I said, just look at politics. Look at people talking about, and I'm not going to go on either side of this, but look at coronavirus. It's unbelievable. Like there are people who are totally on one side. There are people who are totally on the other. They're absolutely convinced. And you know, we don't really have enough information for anybody to be on any side.
Yeah.
Like we still barely know what the hell we're doing. Like it took us, I don't know, 75 years of medical research before medical professionals really had a good understanding of influenza. We've been working on this for like a year and a half. Like, I don't know what the hell we're doing.
We have no idea what we're doing.
No.
All right. Two more quick questions. First one is, what is your guilty pleasure?
Like nutrition? Like anything if I'm going to go off the rails or
anything you want.
I'm going to catch hell for admitting this. I do like vodka.
Okay. There you go. You heard it here. You heard it here first.
It's delicious. Yeah. I just it's funny, my fiance, like she really doesn't like it. I've drank way less since being engaged, which is a good thing.
It's a good thing.
But yeah, I mean, I used to have like a double vodka with lime. Like, probably shouldn't admit how many of those I had.
At the end of that 12-hour workday.
Yeah. I get together with my friends, and I have some outstanding friends. We all do charity work together. We raise money for at-risk kids, send them to summer camp. And my friends and I, as a group of 150 guys, we raised $2.5 million a year.
Whoa!
So we're good at it, really good at it. And yeah, it's an organization in San Francisco called the Guardsmen.
Say it again, and we'll tag it.
It's called the Guardsmen.
Guardsmen. Okay.
Yeah, and you know, when I get together with my friends, like, yeah,
I love it.
All
right, last question. We'll change things up a little bit. What one question would you like to ask me?
What drove you to Florence, Italy?
Well, I would say probably 3 reasons. Reason number 1 was I believe that we have nature, nurture, and I'm going to add one, neighborhood. So my grandparents are from Naples, Italy. So I was raised with a bit of Italian background. So it was kind of in my DNA. But when I am here and I'm walking through these streets, the neighborhood, the epigenetics, for lack of a better word, walking through what is ostensibly an outdoor museum, I feel inspired and creative and alive. So that would be the first one. The second one is the politics. I'm not a political guy, but you know, I've been around 55 years, and we are in a place right now in America, particularly, where, as you've mentioned, people have one side or the other. And it's so polarizing that I feel like I can't even open my mouth about you can't have an opinion about anything. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or whatever you are. You can't have an opinion without fighting. That got old after a while. And then the third thing was I have a 7-year-old daughter, and it has become commonplace to have shootings in schools in America. And that didn't exist when we were growing up. That never happened. And the amount of shootings now, when kids get shot, it doesn't even make the news anymore.
Like our country has a mental illness problem, and I think it's an SSRI specifically problem, and we're calling it a gun problem. It's not a gun problem. It's a mental health problem.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
And one day I was living in Hermosa in LA, and my daughter's school backed up. My home backed up to my daughter's school, and my wife and I are sitting there having lunch in the afternoon, and we can hear when the bells goes off at the school or whatever. My daughter was in kindergarten, and all of a sudden we hear on the intercom, "Get under the table, get under the table, get under the table," and we're like, "Oh shit, this is not happening." So we called the school and we asked them, like, what's going on? They said, "Oh, no, everything's fine. We're just doing a shooter drill." I said, "A shooter drill? She's in kindergarten." I said, "Well, yeah, just in case a shooter comes in, we have to get them ready." She comes home with a pack that has tourniquets and bandages that they put in their book bag just in case somebody comes in and starts shooting. And it was the thing that I needed.
That's slightly manipulative.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it has happened a handful of times. Equipping every student with gunshot bandages is almost like, that's propaganda.
It's propaganda.
It's just anti-gun propaganda.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, our country's terrible.
Yeah.
We got a huge like manipulation / tyranny problem.
It got crazy. So then I made the decision. I said, I'll do an experiment. I'll come here and see how I like it. And, it's been 3 months, and I have no intention of leaving. I'm loving it. It could be beginner gains. I don't know. But right now I'm in love with it. So we'll see what the future brings.
One thing I find so funny about Italy, I'm a huge fan of high performance vehicles.
Yeah.
And I've had 2 Italian sports cars. I currently drive a Lamborghini every day.
Yep.
What's so funny about Italy is I don't think there's a country with rougher roads.
Right.
I'm like, like when I was in Siena, I was like, if I had my Lamborghini here, I would do some serious damage to the nose and the bottom of the car.
Yeah,
because these cobblestone streets are just like, just destroying low to the ground vehicles. And it's like all these cars are made in Italy, but clearly they're made to drive in the United States.
For sure.
We actually have like some pretty decent roads, but
or a track. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Or a track. Well, Dr. John, this has been fantastic. Any final, you're welcome. Any final words, suggestions, or an ask for people that are listening?
If anybody's interested in learning more about the X3, about gaining muscle as fast as possible, being as lean as possible, as fast as possible, I have a landing page because my social media, my last name is tough to spell for a lot of people. So it's drj.com, DOCTOR, the letter J.com. And you can find links to everything there.
Beautiful. Thanks a lot, Dr. John.
All right. Have a good day.